Episode 17, with host of the Primal Blueprint podcast with Mark Sisson and author of the Paleo Thyroid Solution, Elle Russ. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining me again this week. We have yet another amazing episode lined up for you. I am your host, Chase Chewning, and this is Ever Forward Radio. Hey everybody, welcome back to Ever Forward Radio, and this week I'm joined by a very special guest, someone who is really making waves and has had a great experience in the whole N=1 world as far as learning what best works for your body, what doesn't, and how to really take power in your health in your own hands. And I am speaking about none other than Miss Elle Russ. Elle, how you doing this morning?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking earlier, and I know you're probably staring at a very beautiful California sunrise right now, and I'm shacked up in my closet studio. And Elle is someone who is making just as big waves in that industry. So Elle, I would love to hear your origin story, what really the Primal Blueprint, what paleo is all about, and why you made this huge, not only just diet, but lifestyle transition.
Yeah, so my story basically is that about, in the year 2000 or so, I moved to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting. And, at the time especially, even though it's a little bit more open now, but leading ladies were, looked like athletes, right? Fit, trim, looking good. And so that's kind of part of the job, right? And so I did that because that was the category I fit into with the way that I looked. So, I went to the gym, I worked out every day, and I did all of the things that conventional wisdom would tell you to do. Now, at the time, there was no such thing as paleo primal. The only thing sort of close to that high-fat, moderate protein, low-carb paradigm would be Atkins, but that has other aspects to it that aren't necessarily great. So no one really knew about this. And at the time, the paradigm, the old paradigm was, eat every 2-3 hours, keep insulin since, steady zone,
yes,
3 meals a day, 2 snacks, and all of that stuff. So I really followed that paradigm. And then for a while, I was really essentially probably on a low-fat, high-protein, low-carb diet, which doesn't work, and I get into the details of why later, but why that will backfire. And then also, I was doing what Mark Sisson has coined as chronic cardio, meaning really going over 75% of your max heart rate into the sugar-burning zone, glucose-burning zone on my workouts. So I was what we call in the paleo primal world a sugar burner. Now, how do you know you're a sugar burner? Well, if you can't go more than 4, 5, 8, 24 hours without eating and not have a hangry meltdown or a brain lapse or get, cranky or tired, you're a sugar burner. And if you're listening and you're going, oh my God, I can't go 8 hours without food, then you are a glucose-dependent sugar burner and you're on your way to some problems. So how do you know you're a fat burner? When you become fat adapted, your primary fuel you switch it over to become fat, which is actually what our DNA expects of us, which is why when you do the other paradigm and you are a sugar burner, that's why you see 100,000 type 2 diabetes commercials on television, because that paradigm will get you there. A high carb life will get you there. And so that's why people are there. So what happened is I'm trying to stay fit, and I was very fit. People come up to me and be like, hey, you work out, how do you do this? Or, I definitely was this pillar of, looking like this amazing, fit person, but I was struggling inside because I'd be dying if I didn't eat every 3-4 hours. I had these blood sugar up and down, definitely hypoglycemia. By the way, the way to cure hypoglycemia is to get fat adapted. And the reason you are hypoglycemic, if you are, is because you're a sugar burner. So I was like hypoglycemic, up and down, over-exercising. What does that do? It F's up your thyroid. So
fair enough,
what happened and I'll tell you all the nuances behind that, and I can connect it all as to why Paleo Primal is the ultimate for thyroid health. So long story short is I'm doing well, I'm fit, and then all of a sudden I just start getting my period every couple of weeks, which is not how it should be for, healthy females. I go to the doctor. They're putting me on birth control pills. They're trying to, put Band-Aids on the symptoms. No one's looking into like why this is happening to me with perfect health history. And then my hair started falling out. I started to get acne. I had perfect skin my whole life. I started to get really fat. So for example, so I'm 5'2", and at the time I was about 17% body fat, maybe 115 pounds, like pretty, doing well. And
on paper, that sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, and without changing anything, I exploded to 160 pounds and about 35% body fat.
Wow.
Working out 2 hours a day and eating less than 1,200 calories a day. Now, I suffered for 2 years. I went undiagnosed. I went to doctor after doctor. My thyroid story is that I could not find a doctor to help me or that was knowledgeable. And so I had to do it myself. And so twice in 10 years, I fixed serious hypothyroidism on my own, dosing myself. I had to literally become my own doctor. And what I learned through that process is why I became naturally an accidental expert in this. And, and then was able to share that with everyone. The light didn't go off until I had cured a second round of hypothyroidism called reverse T3 hypothyroidism, which is something that's on the rise with people who are not on thyroid hormone medication and people who are on thyroid hormone medication. And once I fixed that, I had, again, gained this weight. And I was working out and I was trying to lose this weight. My thyroid had been fixed. Like I was fine. I was on the right dose of medication. And I couldn't lose weight. And it's because most people who have been in a hypothyroid state for a while, especially if you've been a sugar burner, you will become insulin resistant. And so you can get on thyroid hormone and feel better and you feel awake and alive again and your brain's working and all of that. But then you're like, how the hell do I get rid of the stubborn weight that I gained while I was in that scenario? And likely it's insulin resistance. But if it is, the only way to deal with that is a low carb, high fat, moderate protein paradigm.
Yeah.
So basically, what over-exercising and eating that way does in combination with each other is it will exhaust your adrenal glands eventually. The spikes up and down of your blood sugar, being a hypoglycemic or a sugar burner, every time there's those drops, cortisol rises to meet that threat. And every time cortisol rises, now it's anti-thyroid, it's anti-testosterone. That's why men get low testosterone when they over-exercise, burn themselves out, and then they can't recover and they're tired and they're like wondering what's going on and they're not waking up with erections. It's literally change your lifestyle and diet, and you can get high testosterone back in like 6 weeks. It's that quick. But cortisol is such an antagonistic situation for testosterone and all of our sex hormones. So I'll go into the details of what a paleo primal lifestyle means. But the reason, there's a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons paleo primal works is, A, it's not a gimmick. It literally is just the human appropriate diet from our DNA, our ancestors before, grains and, domestication of animals 10,000 years ago. This is how we ate and operated. And here's why it's ideal. Because it is the ultimate in adrenal management and blood glucose management. You cannot get better and more efficient with any other eating lifestyle paradigm than this one for adrenals and for glucose. If you have great adrenals and you have great glucose, you have a great life. All of the signals of the hormones and everything will absolutely be in line with one another. It's when we get out of that, and just think about it for a second. It makes zero sense that we are the only living things in this world that have food issues. But you know what's funny? All of the success stories on the Primal Blueprint, people who go paleo primal, the biggest benefit is that their food addictions are gone. They're like, I don't obsess about food. I don't even think about it. I can't believe this. I can't believe I'm living this life.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense. The other thing, too, is you're able to be sustained for a long period of time. I literally right now, it's 7 a.m. my time. I've had a cup of coffee. If I didn't eat anything, which I usually don't anyway, or I might have a cup of bone broth, a little butter, or a little grass-fed whey, but I don't really eat much in the morning hours. I still right now, if I didn't have anything to eat, could go an entire 24 hours, be totally fine. I could go work out. I could go have a full day of mental, activity and be totally fine.
You don't have hangry time?
No, you do not, because when you're fat adapted, that's not what happens. The other thing, too, is when you're not fat adapted and you're a sugar burner and you're on this roller coaster and your energy starts to drop after 4 hours, do you know what's actually happening in your body? Your muscles are catabolizing.
Uh-huh.
So when you're a fat burner, if you go without food for like a week, or you had to eat like vegetarian for a week or something like that, you're caught in the middle of nowhere, your muscles would not start to break down. They will, though, if you're on the sugar burning paradigm. they will start to break down. So if you, as a person in this world, want to retain the muscle that you're working so hard to build at the gym, then go Paleo Primal, because it's the muscle-sparing way to go.
Elle, back in the beginning of your story, you used the T word a lot, and that is thyroid. And I think this day and age, a lot of us get misdiagnosed or too quickly diagnosed as being hypothyroid, hyperthyroid. Could you maybe explain a little bit more about this magical thing in the human body called the thyroid, and what would the signs and symptoms be like for someone to be on the lookout for, to get themselves checked out, or to maybe adopt a different diet and lifestyle?
Right. So the thyroid gland, which is, if you're a guy, it's like below your Adam's apple, it's kind of the base of your neck. It's a butterfly-shaped gland, and what it does is it is the master gland of the entire body. So 1 in a gajillion people might be born without one. That would be a very rare birth defect, okay?
Yes.
So that's not usually what happens. But you cannot live without a thyroid gland. You will die. Hands down. There's nothing that can be done for you if you don't have a thyroid gland. So if you're listening to this and you don't have a thyroid gland and it was removed, you are on thyroid hormone replacement, or you wouldn't be listening to this because you'd be dead. Now, if you are going to die without a thyroid gland, aka proper thyroid hormones, right? What do you think is going to happen to you when you live a life of poor suboptimal thyroid hormone output and metabolism? It's going to be a slow death. And that's what it feels like. That's what hypothyroidism is. You will eventually die from something you got because you were in a disease state that fostered it. You will get misdiagnosed. I got misdiagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Do not have it. Never had it since. But if you were a gynecologist back then and looked at an ultrasound, it looked exactly like I did have it, and it probably did.
Wow.
What caused it, though? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you will spend a life. You will get type 2 diabetes, and then you'll die from you won't die directly from hypothyroidism, but you will. And
it's the drop in the pond that creates that ripple.
Is what hypothyroidism is. You are deteriorating rapidly. You're accelerated aging. You are slowly dying, and that's what it feels like. And your brain also suffers because we have more thyroid receptors in our brain than anywhere else. So cognitive abilities, I had over 30 symptoms. I'm going to rattle off some ones. The biggest ones are cold hands and cold feet, or feeling cold when everyone else is not. And people, you know who you are if you're out there, because you're always cold no matter what. That's a problem. You can do diagnostics at home, and I put that in my book, to even use temps to decide whether or not there's a threat you might be hypo. Temps are a very accurate gauge of that. And also adrenal sufficiency as well. And those instructions are in my book as well. So the cold, hair falling out for women and men. If you're a guy, not waking up with erections or being super tired, hence low testosterone. Women, gynecological issues constantly. So this is a big, big indicator. Infertility or miscarriages or weird cysts, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids, anything gynecologically off. It usually will manifest itself there first for women. Uncontrollable weight gain, inability to lose weight. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're hypothyroid, you can work out 800 times a day, you will not lose weight. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible feeling to not have control over your body. To go out there in the world and work out every day and have people look at you like you're a lazy, fat, whatever, because they don't believe you that you work out.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? This is the kind of world you're living in when you're struggling with this and you're undiagnosed or you're not treated properly. 60%. So first of all, 200 million people in the world have thyroid problems. It's an epidemic. It has been for a while. The number one prescription in the U.S. is a thyroid medication, and not the most optimal one. It's called Synthroid. And if you're on it, reevaluate it, because it's not the most optimal, and it's something people really need to reevaluate if they're on Synthroid. 60% of people go undiagnosed, and then there are a huge percentage of people who are on thyroid hormone, and they're still not feeling well, and they keep going to the doctor, and the doctor's like, but your thyroid's fine. And this is what I say to those people. Learn. You just got diagnosed. You've been on thyroid medication for 20 years, and you don't even know what it does, how it works. Let's smarten up, people, because I didn't either.
Yeah.
I suffered because I just trusted a doctor. What's causing this, right? So, don't be dummies out there, guys. If someone diagnoses you with anything, you become an expert in it, because you are likely going to even know more about your doctor, and you're going to you have to be a partner. That's part of my book. How do you step up? How do you deal with patronizing doctors? How do you deal with getting to the bottom and finding the right doctor for this thing? So anyway, let's go back to some other symptoms. Horrible. Inner itching of the ears. Extreme bloat, puffy eyes and face, hair falling out. I probably mentioned dry, cracked skin on index finger or heels. extreme bloat, weight gain, horrible constipation that laxatives won't even solve, no matter how many you take. Digestion will break down, so you produce less hydrochloric acid, and this is why a lot of hypo patients are often deficient in the following: B12, vitamin D, low iron storage, which is ferritin, particularly for women who are menstruating. Homocysteine can be high, DHEA can be low. And so those are classic with hypothyroid patients because you make less hydrochloric acid so that when you eat, it's not breaking it down, right? Then the nutrients are not getting absorbed. And now you are, once you solve the thyroid problem, your body will hold on to those nutrients and you don't then have to keep, going back for, with the levels.
Does this spill over into a possible leaky gut syndrome? You have less hydrochloric acid, so your body becomes less able to digest and absorb the nutrients you need. Your stomach lining is more permeable than allowing things to flow through that shouldn't, basically, right?
No question about it. And also just poor gut health, whether it be candida, whether it be an overgrowth of bad bacteria. Fixing gut health is important because a lot of conversion of the thyroid hormones, not a lot, some of it happens in the gut, but also if you're taking thyroid hormones and you're not also working on correcting your gut, then what you're ingesting is also not going to be doing its job. And then, of course, we know, and how important gut health is to life. Some other symptoms, low sex drive. Another symptom would be, other than like low temperatures and things that are diagnostic, there's been some really random ones. People have, I've heard some really random ones. The one that I had that is kind of random. Well, another one that's not random, but people resonate with if you tell them, is heavy legs. So if you have heavy legs, you feel like when you walk, it's like dragging trunks. I've had people contact me and go, "Oh my God, when you said heavy legs, I knew something was wrong." And that's usually related to low iron, actually, low ferritin. And ferritin, by the way, should be between 50 and 100 for men and women. And you're really looking at about, between 60 and 90 for a woman. And if it's below 50, you really need to consider supplementing iron and getting it up there. If iron sufficient is not stored, thyroid hormones can't get to where they need to go. And so that's a part of it. So adrenal, iron, and thyroid all related. Often also, let's say you have low thyroid hormone. Now you're hypothyroid. You're getting undiagnosed or mistreated by all these doctors. You're trying to figure out, well, in the meantime, now your adrenals are taking over and they are over and outputting cortisol at a high level to try to give you energy, to get you up and get you going because you don't have energy from any thyroid hormones. So now what happens? You have adrenal fatigue. So this is classic. Classically, hypo patients have serious cortisol, adrenal issues, along with like an iron problem, let's say, and other nutrient issues. And these things have to be solved in conjunction with each other or whatever you're taking in terms of thyroid hormone. Or if it's your own natural thyroid you're trying to fix, that's not going to get to where it needs to go and get metabolized properly unless you have this foundational soup ready to go to prepare it. So there's a trifecta of things you have to like kind of work at and assess as you're going through this process. But I want to just say this. This is 100% solvable. No one out there should ever listen to any doctor that says, well, you're always going to have to struggle with X because you have hypothyroidism. That is a lie. You run from that doctor. Run. Okay, that's doctors know what they're doing. So people are getting misdiagnosed or undiagnosed or mistreated because most of the doctors out there are uninformed doctors who are practicing old, outdated protocols from 30, 40 years ago.
Yes.
And this is why if you really want to get to someone who knows what they're talking about, you got to go to like a functional medicine MD, an MD that has true integrative knowledge and experience, a doctor who's gone above and beyond their initial MD training. And a functional medicine doctor is going to be the best person to go to because they understand usually these extra components. They understand selenium is important. It's one of the most important nutrients in thyroid health. They understand how to test for pre-diabetic situations and what to do about it. They understand all of these components. If you go to a regular doctor, they give you a pill for thyroid hormone and you leave. But they don't test these other things to know if that thing's even going to work. Then people take it and they go, I'm not better, I'm not feeling better. And again, I would say, why are you relying on your doctor to fix you? Stop it. Mm-hmm. Jump in the game. Get in there now or you will lose. You're going to lose.
And that's what you did exactly. I mean, you went through the same process.
Because I didn't have a choice. I was suffering for 2 years. At that point, I went to like 20 doctors. no one was helping me, or they were giving me wrong things that hurt me, or they wouldn't give me the right dose of thyroid medication to get me to the right level. They didn't know these other components. You know who knew about this stuff? The way that I was able to help myself is through fellow patients like me, who started a Yahoo group online called the Natural Thyroid Hormone Yahoo Group, which is run by a woman named Janie Bowthorpe, who has the best site on thyroid health in the world called StopTheThyroidMadness.com. Go there for a first order of business if you're listening and you feel like you might have a hypo issue. That woman saved my life before she wrote a book of the same name of the website, Stop the Thyroid Madness. It's a great book. It's not going to cover what mine does, but it is one of the most valuable books out there. And these fellow patients were the ones that were like, you need to look at this. You need to look at this. These were people that had suffered for 20 years, finally found the answers, and then decided to go online and be altruistic and help other patients. That is really the best bet for figuring out and talking to other patients. And, there's moderators, obviously, on those groups. You've got to be careful and not take, every advice they say. And it's just patient to patient. It's not doctor advice. But people can look at your labs and give you opinions or suggestions of what to talk to your doctor about. So there's a lot of free ways to get help here. My book's also extremely cheap, Paleo Thyroid Solution. It's like the cheapest thyroid book out there, and actually probably one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to be braggy. I'm just saying, coming from a point of reading a bunch of thyroid books, what's in my book that's not in a lot of books is I was always reading these books going, first of all, where's my answer to losing this damn weight I gained? I'm not getting that answer. I've read 100 diet books and they're not working. Nothing's working.
Which has got to be probably the biggest question people out there have as soon as they get that hypothyroid problem.
Weight I gained? When am I going to start fat burning?
Exactly.
Again? And let me tell you something too, and this is extremely important. So there's a couple varieties of thyroid disorders. There's just general hypothyroidism, where something can go wrong from diet and lifestyle, and you can give it to yourself, or sometimes it runs in families and things like that. But one of the thyroid disorders is called Hashimoto's. It's an autoimmune disease that affects the thyroid gland, just like type 1 diabetes. So in type 1 diabetes, the immune system makes a mistake, and it kind of starts attacking the pancreas. And that's why those people have to go on insulin, right? And in Hashimoto's, what happens is the immune system makes a mistake, and it senses that your thyroid gland is the one that's the enemy, and it starts attacking it. And in Hashimoto's, what we do know for sure is that grains trigger the antibodies. So if you have been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, even if you're feeling great and you are on thyroid hormone and you have no symptoms and life is great, look at your antibodies. You need to get them down, and the way to get them down is through diet and lifestyle. And you can achieve it, and you can get them down to undetectable levels. And that is something that, by the way, most doctors out there do not know. They do not know that you can actually do something about the antibodies. There's a success story in my book named Kara, who struggled for many years. Untreated. Doctor kept telling her she was fine. She wasn't. She was on thyroid hormone, but nothing was working. She was gaining weight, miscarriages. Finally, she got onto the right medication. She'd been tested wrong for 12 years by her endocrinologist, tested incorrectly, and then no one even had tested her for Hashimoto's.
Wow.
Then she finally finds a doctor. She gets fixed. She gets on the right medication, and she's going along strong. And what happens is her antibodies are like still at 300 and, whatever. And her doctors just think, well, this is normal. She has Hashimoto's, therefore she's going to have antibodies. No, you do not want antibodies, because the presence of antibodies equal inflammation. Antibodies equal inflammation equals getting more autoimmune, more inflammatory problems, more high risk of very increased risk of cancer and other issues. So you do not want antibodies. You want to lower them. Most doctors don't know you can even do anything about it. So that's a problem. So then I learn all that I learn, and I tell Kara, my friend, I say, hey, listen, I know you're never going to quit grains, but this is bad news about Hashimoto's. I know you have it. I just want you to have this information. I want you to live a good life. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. She goes primal and paleo, and then literally in a couple of months she retests her antibodies. They dropped from 300 to 75, and then the last test she took, they were down to 25. Okay,
that is incredible.
That's just from eliminating grain. And by the way, she had some cheats in there. It's not like she was completely 100%.
Oh, she's human, of course. Yeah, that's a huge change to adopt right away, going from a standard American diet to even go to gluten-free or to paleo. But Primal Blueprint, you all have some very specifics in that diet that obviously yield results and fit a very particular type of person. So I mean, that's incredible for her to go through.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people are seeing too. You can really get them. I just had a friend the other day who had both. There's two Hashimoto's antibodies. Some people test positive for both or one and not the other. And I had a friend who had antibodies on both antibodies just extremely high. They actually have become a primal health coach. But in just the past 4 months, their antibodies have dropped so low to almost undetectable amounts that they will eventually be able to get off thyroid hormone.
Now, Elle, would you say, or is it possible, say, like someone like myself, I try to live a healthy lifestyle. I eat right most of the time. I enjoy my cheat meals, my craft beer every once in a while. I work out. I'm active. I try to be incorporating health and wellness into every aspect of my life. Now, I don't feel that maybe I have all these true telltale signs and symptoms. Would it be possible for someone like me or someone similar to my eating habits and lifestyle to be hypothyroid, to be in this imbalance and not really know it?
You would have some kind of symptoms of some kind. But let me just explain a subtle symptom that could be something that people are like, So any kind of lower energy, general malaise or depression. Okay, so particularly stuff with the brain. So for example, if you feel like you're getting dumb, like you're not, I know that sounds funny, but it really is a truth.
Oh, I know that brain fog, right?
Yeah, it's brain fog.
Yeah.
And also it's so if you feel like you're mixing up your words like a dyslexic, or you just can't really focus on a book or even a TV show, or you're talking to people and you're just like, what? You have to have them repeat it. You're not remember anything cognitive that feels. And here's the thing about the cognitive stuff. This is what I have learned. People are kind of afraid to talk about that because they don't know what's happening to them.
Oh, yeah, you don't understand it, yeah.
They kind of feel like,
scary.
am I getting really old? Or, my Aunt Jenny has mental disorders. What if or my brother's depressed? Maybe I'm, and the bottom. So a lot of people go to psychiatrists. If you think you're bipolar or have been diagnosed as such or severely depressed, you better get your thyroid tested because let me tell you something. You can take Prozac or any SSRI you want. It'll work for 3 months. Then it won't work because you never solved the root of the problem. And the brain and thyroid, hand in hand. So that's what happened to me too. I started to mix up my words like a dyslexic constantly. I've never had those kind of issues. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. Hand to brain dexterity is off. So messy handwriting, clumsiness. I am extremely coordinated and athletic. Like, one of the most coordinated people in the world. I would knock over stuff. I'd be bumping into things. I mean, like really weird stuff. And so that kind of scares people, because when you're young and you feel like you're getting old or your brain's not working, you're not really sure how to convey that. And it's kind of scary because you think maybe you have a mental problem. Right? So that's when you need to get the thyroid tested correctly. And just, even though all this information is in my book, and even a lot of this information is on the website, Stop the Thyroid Madness, that I mentioned to you guys earlier, let me just rattle off the main thyroid panel.
Yeah, please do.
Because I want everyone to have it. If you want to get correctly, accurately tested, you need to get free T3. That's free as in freedom, okay, FREE. So free T3, free T4, TSH, TPO, AB, and TGAB. TPO stands for thyroid peroxidase, and TG stands for thyroid globulin. Those are the main 6 first order of business panel. If you have extra money and you can do it as well in that same blood draw, I would add DHEA sulfate, B12, vitamin D 25 hydroxy, and like homocysteine. And if you feel that you might be insulin resistant or have issues with like really you can't lose weight even if it's hypo or not related, you want to get the HbA1c. That's pretty much the pre-diabetic test. Anything above 5.2 is a problem no matter what you read online. You want it to be 5.2 or lower. Anyone with 5.2 or above is at like a 200% increase chance of cancer, diabetes, and other things. When I was pre-diabetic, mine was 5.7, which is very pre-diabetic, approaching diabetes at 6.0.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So everyone take pause of that, rewind, get your notes down, and review maybe your last physical, or definitely bring it with you in for your next. Or you can even get these in a standalone metabolic panel, if I'm not mistaken.
You can. You can go into private MD labs, direct labs. Depending on what state you live in, you can get this tested on your own without a doctor. That's really easy to do. But I do want to say this. If you're out there and you look back at your old, if you're on thyroid hormone or you were diagnosed or something, get your old medical. And if they did not test the things that I just told you, you better run. You are dealing with a moron, uninformed idiot doctor. And I'm not being like jokey, like that's serious.
Yeah, it's, really it's human neglect, patient neglect, because we live in a day and an age.
Borderline malpractice, in my opinion.
I could definitely agree with that, because we know so much more about the human body now, to your point earlier of, a lot of doctors who went through medical school and learned the human body and biology, physiology, anatomy 30, 40 years ago. We are very, very different creatures. We operate in a very different world. We have different diets, different lifestyles, and that affects every part of the human body, externally and internally. Not to say that we have this innate origin that, we all kind of have a baseline of. And so this is why you need to take the power, take your health in your own hands, know your body, know what your doctors are doing and are not doing, and really seek out the help that is going to best stack the conditions in your favor, learn more about what is going on internally so that you can then affect your external lifestyle. So
absolutely. And make sure, look, most doctors, go in 15 minutes. That's all they have to spend with you. And they're not going to look at it. They don't know jack about nutrition. What they're going to do is you're really asking for a prescription or surgery when you go to a regular doctor. That's what you're asking for. If you think you're going to be getting any other kind of advice, like, oh, what should I eat? I mean, listen, at one point I knew someone that had hit diabetes level, and their doctor was like, okay, well, you need to start taking this pill. And they're like, well, is there anything else I can do, like diet? And they're like, no, just take the pill. And then that person learned out about low carb and high fat and how that cures type 2 diabetes. And they were like, why the hell didn't the doctor tell me that?
I'm hoping this statistic has changed, but I heard a while back that the average American medical school program, doctors these days go through med school and they have about one elective of nutrition. Exactly.
Yep,
and when you think about that,
was true 30 years ago.
That's literally what makes us human beings. Nutrition is the absolute foundation of cellular health any way you look at it. And so the fact that the doctors aren't receiving that is really tragic when you look at the education system. That's a whole other topic. But, really looking at finding a doctor who does just like what Elle did, seeks out and empowers themselves to find what is working, what is not working, and stays up to date with all of these new metabolic panels.
Yeah, and Dr. Gary Forsman is a functional medicine MD, and he's on my book. There's an in-depth Q&A with him in the back.
Yes,
you don't believe what I have to say about it? You can
that.
hear it directly from a doctor's mouth, and he will brutally tell you why other doctors are idiots. He will, and if you know what, if you need to read that or take that to your doctor to help educate. I've actually had doctors contact me and say, thanks for your book. I'm actually adopting some of this in my practice.
Amazing.
Great.
Amazing.
Please step up. You know what I want? Dr. Forsman, and I have plenty of podcasts with him on the Primal Blueprint podcast, so if people are curious about him, you can hear me talking with him about thyroid and other subjects. He's a total geek. I want my doctor to be a science nerd, geek, interested, excited,
Absolutely.
Wanting to get to the bottom. Right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of shit, right? That's
what
you want out of a doctor. That's
you have
what
to continually be a student.
Like, he's not going to be happy till he gets to the bottom of it, right? That's who you want.
So speaking of getting to the bottom of it, what does the Primal Blueprint, what does this paleo lifestyle have to offer for someone who is experiencing all these symptoms, experiencing hypothyroidism? What is it about this diet that really stimulates this change?
Well, first of all, we hate saying it's diet, because diet sounds like for example,
You're right.
diet or anything else. It's a manipulation of one's system. So, for example, like giving someone the birth control pill, right? That's a manipulation of how things should normally work. When people take thyroid hormone, it's not a manipulation. It's giving your body what it doesn't have, right?
Yes.
There's a little bit of a different philosophy behind what, how you are affecting your body, right? And in the birth control pill is horrible for that reason, because it's doing something your body's not meant to do, right? So that's where you kind of run into problems. And so this is really the only, now if anyone is curious about the science behind this and really wants a good expose into it, look into a documentary that I believe is free on Netflix right now called The Perfect Human Diet by C.J. Hunt. And it's a picture of a fork with a piece of steak on it.
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, so this is really, the science is out there on this. It's not that you can't live as a sugar burner, but you'll probably run into problems later. So here's why it's optimal. First of all, the actual list of foods in and of itself is a human-approved list of foods. It's the elimination of grains, legumes, most dairy, and things like that, although Primal is a little bit more lenient and kind of allows for some, full-fat dairy and maybe chocolate and a glass of wine or something. Okay, hardcore paleo people would not do that. Likely.
I hear that, wine drinkers out there, you're safe.
That's right. You can have a glass of wine if you decide to adopt this. But what it really is about is what I had previously mentioned before. It's the ultimate in adrenal cortisol management, and it's the ultimate in blood glucose management. Those things are both related to our health. However, the food list, what it starts to do is get rid of the shitty oils, clean up your life. You start to get rid of the inflammatory factors in your diet, number one. Then you start to eliminate things that could be affecting thyroid negatively, particularly grains if you have Hashimoto's, but also grains cause intestinal permeability, and they are an issue. So if you want to clean up gut health, that's the way to do that too. You need to eliminate these things as well because they're often prime suspects in food allergies as well. So, you just clean it out. You can also go to Whole30. That's another good way of kind of looking at a clean list of foods. That's part of it. The other is getting nutrients optimized, getting vitamin D up to the proper levels between 70 and 90, getting ferritin and making sure that's where it is. And I already discussed that. B12 should be between 800 and 1,000. Homocysteine needs to be low. DHEA is an adrenal hormone and an anti-aging hormone that decreases in our 30s, but when people are hypothyroid, that often gets drained. And that's something that can come back naturally or could be supplemented as well along the way to health. So there's that component of it. Particularly limiting grains for Hashimoto's is the big part of the paleo primal paradigm. And also just of healing the gut. So, and selenium. Selenium is huge. Often people have deficiencies. I once had a selenium deficiency, which could have been the reason why I even got a thyroid problem in the first place.
Really?
And I want to just say this overall. So I suffered with 2 bouts in a decade of hypothyroidism. One was a reverse T3 problem. So I had horrific hypothyroidism twice. Even while I was, first time I had it, I was not on thyroid hormone. Then I got on thyroid hormone, which was called Armour Thyroid, natural desiccated, and I was doing well for 6 to 7 years. Then I got hit again with this reverse T3 problem that's on the rise. And I fixed that on my own, and that's an even scarier problem to have because really doctors do not know how to do that. So then, now where we are, it's May 18th of 2017, and I have been off of all thyroid hormones for 3 months for the first time in 13 years. It's an accidental medical miracle, but it's not, because when I look back, I don't have any hypothyroidism in my family. I don't have Hashimoto's. I gave this to myself. I gave this to myself through lifestyle and diet, unbeknownst to me, trying to do the right thing, doing what everyone told me to do. And the information that my book was not out then. Had I had my book, I would have fixed my problem naturally 13 years ago. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm not totally shocked that my thyroid is back, although it's very rare that after 13 years of suppressing your own thyroid, function and overtaking it with exogenous thyroid hormones, that it would bounce back. But I guarantee you I was probably more of a prime candidate for that since I gave it to myself in the first place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a huge point in and of itself.
Over-exercising and under-eating, and that could even include someone who's training for a marathon. The reason you get a thyroid problem is this. This is why it's connected to primal paleo and our primal perspective of our body. At every moment of your life, your body's trying to save you. That's what type 2 diabetes is, by the way. Your body's trying to save your life. It's trying to save you. So this is what happens. Let's say you're overworking out, you're burning a lot of glucose, and maybe you don't even realize you're under eating or you're not eating that much. Your body's going to go, whoa, this person is running from danger because you're doing the flight or flight glucose burning workouts. Yep. Okay. So they're like, this guy is in danger. And until this guy gets out of danger, we are going to lower his thyroid output. We don't want to make him hypermetabolic in a state of frightening inflammation and, cortisol running through his veins because he's running from something, even though you're just like training for a marathon. And then also we're going to lower sex drive. We're going to lower his sex drive and ability to procreate because he is in no position to have a child right now because he can't even feed himself. Yeah. Or he's not out of danger. Same thing happens for women. So now what can induce this? Not just lifestyle in terms of like, if you're like, I don't run, 15 miles a day. So what do I have to worry about? Yeah. But are you stressing out and yelling at the television every day, watching news? I mean, stress does it. And in this stressful society, that's why we have even more and more thyroid problems because the fight or flight, whether it's over caffeine or over working out or just mental stress, that in and of itself can trigger your body to go, what? Nope. So that's what we call also euthyroid 6 syndrome. It's usually when someone's overworking out, under eating. Now, here's the thing. When I was a sugar burner and I had the ideal look and, everything was supposedly great, I struggled with eating issues. I was always thinking about food, could not stop thinking about food, thought I'd have to go to Overeaters Anonymous. But then I was like, but I have this body, and so therefore it must equate. And either people are lying and not telling me they have food issues and obsessed with food, or I'm cursed and everyone else is lucky. But either way, clearly this is how this is how you get this body. And so I guess this is what this means, is that you have to suffer.
This must just be it, right? Yeah.
I thought this must be then how this works. I was totally wrong, and here's why. When you're a low-fat, low-carb paradigm, it's a dangerous combination because you don't have enough fat to satiate you, and 50% of breast milk is saturated fat, by the way. Okay, so nature has a reason for giving us a high fat.
We need it, absolutely.
So, and that's why often vegetarians and vegans who are lifelong, like, don't get their period for 20 years and things like that. We need cholesterol to support our hormones and things like that. So when you're eating that way, your body's bound to break down. And so what happens is when you're eating that way, your body also gets the signal that you're not getting enough calories, or it's not about calories at that point. You're not getting enough satiation of the right nutrients.
You're not getting enough nutrition.
If I had just switched back then, if I had just been primal back then, I would have never gotten the problem. Now, here's the thing. You can't just become fat adapted through diet and then keep the lifestyle component. Like, you can't overwork out and be in a glycolytic state of working out all the time and then try to be fat adapted. So what that also means on the exercise is that you got to take it down. So for example, I got super fat doing hot yoga 5 days a week. People would think, oh my God, 90 minutes, a 90-degree plus room, I'm burning fat like a mofo. Guess what? No, you actually will get fat around your middle because of the cortisol, because of what it's doing with the glucose and that combination.
Your stress levels through the roof in that temperature.
That's right. And once a week, sure, okay, maybe that's your high intensity workout. But that's too high intense. Same with running. So what I had to do is I had to get a heart rate monitor. I have a wrist one, continuous heart rate monitor. And I realized I was hauling ass up the hills on my hikes, and I had to slow it down. And it doesn't feel right at first because this constructed notion of no pain, no gain, the harder I go, the more I sweat, the faster I walk up that mountain, the more I'm going to burn. And it's the opposite. What happens is at the end of it, you've now just drained out your glucose stores. What does that mean? You're going to want sugar. It also, you're probably going to be sore. And now if you don't eat soon, your muscles are going to catabolize because you're a sugar burner and you're a glucose dependent person. You do not want to be glucose dependent. Why do you think we have type 2 diabetes? So let's look at the standard American diet. It suggests 6 to 11 servings of grains every day, along with 2 to 4 servings of fruit. That is a diabetic, high-carb making diet.
Could not agree more.
So you just look at the world, guys. Every commercial's for type 2 diabetes. Are you kidding me? Who doesn't know that now? It's been going on for a couple of years. That's why. And the only way to reverse that is by doing a paleo primal lifestyle. And that's how you do reverse type 2 diabetes. I also just want to point out, all the authors who wrote books back in the day on carbing up for training and carbo loading, they all have type 2 diabetes now.
Yes, I mean, I'm laughing. It's not funny that anyone has diabetes, but it is humorous of how far we've come in our understanding and trial and error with, the human body, and what we once held as the gospel, we now know could not be further from the truth.
That's right. And the greatest example of this, and Mark Sisson has interviewed him on our podcast, and he's a great person to listen to about this topic. His name's Timothy Noakes. He's a professor from South Africa, and he wrote the book Lore of Running or something like that. And it's like the tome of every, endurance athlete, right, carbing up. And he has fallen on his sword in the past couple of years because he's had to come out and go, I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. We are not meant to be functioning on glucose. And he has type 2 diabetes. And now he cannot eat, more than 20 carbs a day.
Wow.
And what we're seeing now is a lot of athletes are having this happen to them, and that's why there's this big trend on ketogenic athleticism at this point.
Oh, yeah, it's huge right now.
Mark Sisson is coming out with a keto book in the fall, but also Primal Endurance. Their new book is really about how to be fat adapted and not be a glucose dependent athlete. And so what we're seeing is, for example, you'll have my yoga instructor who is the P90X yoga guy. He also is an adventure racer. He looks great, slim, trim, no problems, ate healthy, had a little dessert every night maybe, but, normal human being, you'd think. And then he randomly, just for the hell of it, goes and gets blood tested because he and his wife are about to have a baby. And he's like, oh, I guess I should probably get checked out. And they're like, you're pre-diabetic. He's like, excuse me?
Yeah, how?
And when he really looked at it, he realized that his pre-workout shake before a run already had 130 carbs in it. So as a rule of thumb, everybody, if you don't buy my book and don't learn these things, as a rule of thumb, no one, unless you are a bricklayer or a professional Laird Hamilton athlete, do you eat more than 150 total carbs a day. Most people eat 300 or more. And that's the danger zone. That's why people are pre-diabetic, or they have fat around their middle and they're working out every day and it's still not happening.
Yeah, and I
because
think
it's a hamster wheel, right?
Oh yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
working out so hard to burn what I ate there, and now, and again, and also now, every time I go a couple of hours without that food, after now it's approaching the 6th hour, my muscles start to break down.
Yeah.
Why would you want that? But then you get Mark Sisson, and he could go on like a week-long vegetarian retreat and be trapped with no meat, or not even work out and even eat at all, and he would not have muscle loss. But if you're a sugar burner, you will. You'll have muscle loss.
And I think that's a big testament as to, what I've kind of been honing in on this whole episode, and what I preach and teach in my own coaching practice is that what works for one person is not always, and not even most likely ever, going to work 100% the same way for another person. And that's why knowing your lifestyle, knowing your diet, and to your point earlier, when I say diet, I strictly mean the food stuffs that you consume every day.
Sure.
What makes up your nutritional content. So you cannot effectively manage what you do not measure to begin with. So knowing your metabolic panel, knowing what your labs look like, knowing your family history should all 100% play a huge role into your lifestyle, your physical activity of choice, how you train, where you train, and then of course your nutrition. So I think the Primal Blueprint lifestyle, the Primal Blueprint way of eating absolutely could benefit so many people who don't even necessarily have hypothyroidism. But a lot of things that you said,
it's cured skin diseases, and also it is ideal for cholesterol issues. If you have just been told you need to get put on a statin, and people go, what? But my doctor tells me to lower the saturated fat. Let me just clear one notion up for the whole world right now. High fat and a high saturated fat diet has nothing to do with clogging your arteries, okay?
We now know this, absolutely.
But if you eat a high carb diet, if you eat a high fat diet in the presence of a high carb diet, good luck. You will get your arteries clogged. And here's why. The glucose is so offensive to your system. Our ancestors never ate more than 80 carbs a day, okay? So we're not really meant to eat over, like I said, 150, and, that's pushing it for a lot of people. So I couldn't eat 150 carbs a day. I'd be huge. So, I'm 5'2", so I'm a smaller person. You might be able to handle more than me. But at the end of the day, that's really sort of what this is about, So it's interesting because people always equate like, well, fat's bad. And, if you look at the cover of Time magazine from a couple of years ago, it was great. It was a pat of butter on the front, and it said, eat butter. Everything we knew about fat was wrong. And so, the studies done back then, when they would compare that, they never factored in for the carb portion. So they're like, oh yeah, we assessed all these people who ate a lot of steak and fat off of steak. And then also they're not factoring in for the fact that if you have a grain-fed animal and you're eating the fat off of that animal, that's toxic. It can throw off your omega-3 balance in your body versus grains. Or even when this argument is made about climate change and they go, oh, these cows, all this meat, it's not the pastured farms that are doing that.
Yeah.
It's the nuclear waste-looking things you see on the side of the highway with a bunch of cows and a bunch of mud.
Yeah.
That's the bad deal right there. So, it's interesting when people go, oh, that's bad. But then you're like, well, what was the study done? Oh, you injected just cheese? You injected casein and meat into mice? Come on. That right there, the hypothesis is off, So
yes,
if we really look at the science is there. And I am the 5th person in the world certified in this through Mark Sisson and his Primal Health Coach program. It's undeniable. And, ancestral health, evolutionary health, primal, paleo, whatever you call it, it's not about a gimmick mimicking our ancestors. It's learning. We did not have modern diseases until, for example, one of the things you would learn in the Perfect Human Diet is when you look at, like, for example, if you were to take a paleontologist, they could look through a microscope at a piece of, evidence and see whether that's like the DNA from a cow or a human, right? They have this ability. We've mapped this out at this point, right? Number one, there is no such thing as an inherent human being who is designed to be a vegetarian or vegan. End of story. It doesn't mean you can't choose that lifestyle, but just know that you are going against what your DNA as a human being expects of you, and you might run into problems. Number one. Number two, the other thing as well is they don't account for, like, a lot of people in this argument just don't account for some of these nuances, like I said, whether it be, the fact that they're not factoring in a high carb diet when they're looking at high fat, or they're not factoring in grains, and so people go, why don't I just do Atkins? Well, Atkins also allows for a lot of dairy and a lot of grains and other things. You can still have those things, but that's not really clean enough to achieve what you want for optimal health, in my opinion. You got to clean out. And again, it's not to say that you can never have grains, but if you're going to do a whole clean out reset, that's not the way to go. 10,000 years ago is when we really started to domesticate animals and we started to farm. And that's also when our health as humans deteriorated. For example, rheumatoid arthritis was never, ever seen in the history of human evolution on any archaeological record until grains.
No way, really? That's amazing.
That is absolutely true. Scientific fact. And also the other thing as well I found interesting, and I put in my book, and this is more of just like a funny coincidence maybe. Okay. But the first incidences of thyroid issues were about, I don't know, it's like 3,500 to 5,000 years ago, or BC China. And it's interesting because at the time it was Emperor 5 grains, and grains had just been introduced to China.
No way.
So the other thing too is, how Paleo Manifesto is a great book to read for everybody who wants to look at the science behind this as well. So this is not a gimmick. People go, oh, that's cute, eat like caveman. And there's a lot of objections. People will go, oh, well, cavemen were so healthy. Why didn't they live long? Actually, they did. They lived very, very long. They lived into their 80s and 90s. Here's the misconception. When you look at the average median age, it'll be like the death would be like 34. Well, yeah, because you have to factor in that they didn't have emergency rooms. Someone could have died in childbirth. If you made it past puberty back then, you lived long. But think about it. Someone got a scrape, it got infected, your tooth got infected, goodbye.
Yeah, no right? Band-Aids, no 911, no antibiotics, absolutely.
Right. So when you look at a, quote, average, yes, the average age might be 34 years old and look awful, but let's look at the broader picture, right? It's a real narrow way to look at that. When you look at the broader picture, though, we do find out that if you make it past puberty, they often lived into their 80s and 90s with no health issues. Diabetes certainly wasn't around then. It's not thyroid issues, because procreation would have never happened had there been a thyroid epidemic then. And, it's when you really learn about the human body, you see how little it needs, how calorically efficient it can be, and how important it is to have your predominant fuel be fat. It's absolutely 100% aligned with our genetics. And when you get off of that is when you have problems, and that's why we have a bunch of problems. And, that's why people who do this, aside from, fixing the thyroid problem or fixing the, high cholesterol issue or the skin disease or whatever it is, the benefit as well is that they are no longer addicted to food.
Yes, that's huge for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. When you look at body dysmorphia or binging or just, those cravings that seem to come from a place where you can't control, it really gets down to the biological origin point with this. Absolutely. Elle, I definitely sense there's this undeniable passion with you about the human body and diet and empowerment and knowing yourself and what works for you, and this Primal Blueprint lifestyle. I think we could probably go on for a whole mini series here, but and kind of just being conscious of your time. And again, thank you so much for coming on today. This has really been an eye-opening experience for me. I am someone who tries to be aware of all the current offerings in the diet and lifestyle and ways of eating and training world. That's my profession, so I have to be. But I got to say, I've really felt more empowered about my nutritional choices, my patience, and really the advice and things that I need to do with my clients. That steering into a Primal Blueprint way of life, I absolutely have a lot of people in mind for this.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I say learn all you can. If you go to primalblueprint.com or Mark's Daily Apple, which is our main blog, or listen to the first 14 episodes of the Primal Blueprint podcast where Mark talks all about it. I mean, this information is out there for free. No one needs to go buy a ton of books or, sign up for some program. You can just go online. Mark offers a lot of this free information is out there to get you at least started on it. And then, of course, if you want to fine tune or go more in depth, you can. But like I said, from the documentary, Perfect Human Diet, or the Primal Blueprint book, or my book, it either way, it's out there, the information is there. It's worth checking out a different way of living if you are not doing well where you're at.
And speaking of your book, we've got the Paleo Thyroid Solution here. This has been a great resource for me in getting to know you, your story, the Primal Blueprint, and really what is going right, and more importantly, what's going wrong in today's nutritional and medical world. So this is a great book for anyone interested in the Primal Blueprint as your new diet choice. Also looking at maybe some things that might be going wrong with your life, your symptoms. If you've ever been diagnosed or misdiagnosed, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, definitely pick up this book. Elle, where can we find this?
You can find it on Amazon.com or even Barnes & Noble stores all over the country. And anyone can go to my website, elleruss.com, ELLERUSS.com. And if you contact me about thyroid stuff, I mean, I life coach and I do primal coaching too. I also coach with thyroid. But if you contact me, I always send everybody, just for free, like a huge email filled with, like, here are the right blood tests, here are some websites, here's how to find the right doctor.
Awesome.
So you don't have to buy my book to get on the right path. You can just contact me there, and I send that to everybody, because that's just, I spent so much of I became broke trying to figure this out. I know what this is like when you struggling for doctor after doctor, no supplements. It's expensive.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you're not wealthy, it can ruin you. And so my thing is, let's get as much free information to people. Like, for example, I mentioned the blood test earlier. The reason I did that is because I've listened to 1,000 podcasts where they don't even mention what blood test again. You're like, damn it, give me something.
That's the one thing I need.
Yeah, and in my book, one of the things that is not in other books is, like, I show before and after labs of a normal person, labs when I was screwed up, labs when I was better, labs when I was on, how do I look at these things? No other book actually gives lab results. And also no other book showed before and after success stories. Like, I wanted to see, like, how do I do this? And so you don't have to buy my book to get that. The free information is out there, but I constructed that email it's set a lot of people on the right path who don't even need to go further other than me sending them that information. So feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help anyone get on the right path.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And speaking of getting on the right path, the big premise behind EverForward Radio is, really bringing people on like yourself who have these amazing transformation stories, these personnel who have taken a passion for whatever is going on in their life and finding a purpose in that application for it. So how would you say that the products and services that you provide, this Primal Blueprint way of life, your books, your coaching, your email lists, you just being here present on the podcast, how does this help others live a life ever forward?
One of my missions is to really inspire confidence and for people to stand up for themselves in life. I don't care if that's because you're trying to get a raise at your job or because you have a sickness and you want to get better. So empowering anybody to just step up, take control, and persevere, because perseverance pays off. I wouldn't be here right now if I weren't like, nope, not going to accept that, doctor. On to the next one. Moving on. What do I have to do? I will go to the ends of the earth to find out. At one point I said to myself, if I have to fly to India and go to an ashram, I don't care what I have to do. I will not live like this. And you have to, what's your bottom? I can't, Mark Sisson always says, I can't convince someone that their life sucks.
Yeah, that's very true.
If you're out there and you're hating your life and it sucks, it sucks. So, but only you can do something about that. You can't convince someone else. So, I don't try to push the paleo primal thing onto people. People usually will come to me about it. I learned that lesson a long time ago. Sometimes trying to preach positivity can backfire, right? Because
amen to that.
And I'm sure you've come across that a bunch of times. But the one of the ultimate benefits of primal paleo living is, over time, you become so intuitive about what you need. And that is a state that you cannot achieve by being a sugar burner based on the components there. But once you get fat adapted and you're on this train, and getting fat adapted takes about a month, and I'm not going to lie, the first couple of weeks can be pretty brutal, because when your brain's addicted to glucose, it's like kind of detoxing from a drug, right?
Okay.
Mark Sisson, if you're interested, wrote 21-Day Transformation, or you could read my book and learn how to do it. But essentially, the overall is that the intuitiveness of what you need. Like, I now am at the point where I know when I need fat. I know when I need carbs. I know when I've eaten too much protein. Like, these are really amazing things when it allows you to become your best friend with your body and really get to know yourself. And I suggest everyone get on this path, because it's fun. It's fun to biohack, figure out your own thing, what works for you. And when you go down this train, then you don't look at these things out there that were tempting at one point as a sugar burner. Things, muffins, or things aren't even like, you don't even care. It's not even about, I shouldn't eat that thing. It's like, you look at it and you go, no thanks. And I never thought I'd say that, because I was a sugar addict beyond belief. So the intuition that it allows you to have with oneself, if you really go down this train, because it's not, the intuition's not going to happen in 6 weeks, but as you go down this, that's another thing people who've stayed the course say. They're like, wow. And you become calorically efficient. You eat less than you did before and have the same benefits. And it's this really amazing, but it becomes intuitive. And that, how can you beat that for life? Knowing at any time what your body needs.
That's probably the greatest gift we could ever receive. And not even, it's something we can't just wait for. It's exactly what you said. You need to become best friends with yourself. You need to do your due diligence to yourself. And you may not even be experiencing yourself in your prime, regardless of how well you think you eat or work out or your lifestyle. So I always tell everyone, continue to be a student of life. Know what works for you, know what doesn't. And take advantage of these incredible opportunities and advances in the medical world to really just find these specific things that may be holding you back from your best self. Absolutely. Elle, again, thank you so much for coming on Everforward Radio today. This has been just a wealth of health. So anyone who is interested in what Elle has to say, her offerings, the Primal Blueprint, I will list all that information in the show notes, and we will wrap things up here.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.